Hello, my name is Jo and I'm from Strawberry Attic. Today I am showing you how I made a Ravenclaw themed dress for a recent wedding that I attended. I was absolutely over the moon when I got my owl inviting me to the beautiful day up at Peckforton Castle in the north of England. The brides on the day decided that they wanted their wedding to be Harry Potter themed and asked all the guests to come in their house colours. So straight away I knew I'd be wearing something blue. Thinking about the different designs, I wanted something very swooshy, so when I danced on the dance floor at night, I would have lots of fabric to swing around. The front of the dress I decided to embellish with a Celtic Crow design. I started this by getting a couple of different designs I liked off of the internet and pasting different elements of them together on Photoshop. I removed the head of the bird design and replaced it with the symbol from the Deathly Hallows. It's a little Easter egg. I don't think very many people did notice it, but those that did were squealing with delight when they realised what I'd done with the dress. This embroidery was done in a silver thread on the blue taffeta fabric. This is the first project I used my new embroidery machine for, and probably I should have had a little bit more practice, but I thought what the hey and jump right in. Because I'm new to embroidery sewing, I decided it'd probably be easier to get the design embellished on the fabric before actually cutting the pattern out. That way I didn't have to spend a long time trying to get lined up. So that's what I did. The pattern that I used for this design was from a pattern block that I made myself. I did an internet tutorial following step by step on how to do the pattern block and found that I quite liked the fit of it. I did make a mock-up of the dress before actually cutting it in the taffeta, but completely forgot about the fact that the fabric that I used for the mock-up was ever so slight stretch to the cotton. And also I didn't add any ease into the pattern, so once I'd made it into the taffeta, which doesn't have any give really at all in it, the dress design was much smaller than I'd hoped for. You can see here I'm just pinning in the darts for the design. These had to actually be removed, some of them in the end, and made a little bit narrower to give me a little bit more room for the boobage. But once I did that, the end result was all right. As I say, we could have done with a little bit more ease. Here I am just sewing up the darts, starting with the wider end of the dart, taking it up to the point, and then I leave the cottons long on this and tie a knot in them. You can just reverse the sewing machine a couple of stitches or do some on the point stitches to tie those ends off, but that can leave a little bit of bulk, and being such a fine fabric I wanted to leave it nice and light looking. These darts were sewn into both the front and back pieces and also duplicate pieces that made up the lining. Once the darts were sewn in, I got them nice and pressed and then started to construct the bodice. I started by just joining the shoulder seams of the front and the back bodice pieces and then repeating this again on the lining fabric as well. once these seams were sewn, again I pressed them to get a nice crisp edge onto them, and then I started uplining the lining of the bodice around the neck and armholes to the actual outside of the body. How I did this was I start by pinning in the shoulders and making sure that those seams matched perfectly, and then put a pin in the centre, and then I just worked my way out going either side to get the pattern matching nice and flat. The last thing you want to do is have any puckers on the front neck seam. It's going to be the most obvious place that people are going to be looking at, so you really need to work hard to get that nice and flat when it's sewn. The actual castle itself, once we drove up the long sweeping driveway, was like going through a haunted forest, and finally the castle appears in front of you and you drive through an archway where you've got a big forecourt of lovely green grass with the old castle behind you. It actually dates back old enough that Queen Elizabeth I stayed at the castle when she was visiting the area, and it's absolutely beautiful inside. They've done a lot of renovation work after a fire in the 1800s, but what they have done to this castle now is beautiful. In the main room where the ceremony took place, they have a beautiful high vaulted ceiling, and all the rooms have got such beautiful details in them with sconces and original fireplaces. There was even a little seating area that looked just like Dumbledore's office. It was absolutely beautiful. So I slowly sewed around the armholes and the neck holes using a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Took my time on this, wanting to make sure it gets perfect. The last thing you want is an uneven neck. One day I might be able to afford some proper silk taffeta, but for now we'll go with the polyester taffeta. It's certainly an easy fabric to sew with. Once the neck and the arm seams are all sewn together, I'm just going to go around and clip all these seams to make sure that when I turn them out the right way, they are going to sit nice and flat and the fabric's not going to be fighting against itself to get a good turn. And then once that's all clipped, it's really therapeutic, this bit, to actually turn the dress in the right way round, pulling it through the shoulder seams. I've made sure to leave the 2 side seams undone to make this step easier. I did try once on a dress to leave the shoulders open, and so anyway, it didn't work well, so this is the solution I've come up with, and I find it nice and easy. Once it's all turned through, I got that over to the ironing board and got that pressed, and all the seams came up nice and crisp with no puckers and no wobbly bits. And then once it was all turned and pressed, I took to sewing the side seams up of the dress before attaching the skirt. The skirt that I've used for this dress was actually 1.5 circles, so it's a bit bigger than 50% bigger than a circle skirt, but that meant that by the end of the day, when I had made the dress up and got it finished with a horsehair braid, it really swooshed about, and spinning around I felt like an absolute princess in it. once the skirt was on the bodice, I actually ran that through my serger to get a nice clean edge inside. The last thing I wanted was strands of the taffeta coming loose. But yes, so that was all seamed inside with the serger to give a nice clean edge before going on to the next step and closing the dress with a zip in the back. Usually a dress like this I'd have probably given a go at doing another side seam zip, as I did with my Halloween dress that I recently did. Would have been much more successful because I wasn't trying to fit pockets in it as well, but as I had my friend Paula getting changed in the same room as me for the wedding, I knew she'd be able to zip me in, so it was much easier to just pop that zip in the back. As I say, the circle skirt, or circle and a half skirt of this, was finished with a horsehair braid around the bottom to give it some shape, and the dress was worn over a double black petticoat to give it nice volume. And then when finished the dress, I went round and embroidered all of the 12 star signs symbols to the dress, just to make it that little bit more interesting and that little bit more clever, as the Ravenclaws tend to be. And then finally I embellished the dress with Swarovski crystals. I absolutely love the way the crystals catch the light. And then next to each of the star signs, I actually embellished the constellation corresponding to the star sign. I don't think anyone else noticed they were there, but I did, and I was really, really proud of having that on there. Just something that made me smile every time I noticed them. And here I am modelling it in my garden before heading off to the wedding. Here I've got it with my favourite pair of blue banjo irregular choice shoes. Actually, on the day I wore irregular choice chimney smoke, the pair of boots that I've recently bought that I absolutely love. They're a slightly lower heel, so much easier to wear for the day. On the day of the wedding, I was actually representing one of the party's families, as they were unable to make the wedding. So being a mother of the groom, I insisted that I had to have the biggest hat at the wedding. The hat that I ended up making had an impressive 64cm brim on it, and it was embellished with magpie feathers and some black silk flowers. The magpie feathers I made to look like a real bird. I wasn't quite ready to have proper roadkill on my hat, but I did recover some feathers and get those attached to the hat to give it the real wow factor. And I had to give it that big spin just to show off how big this skirt really was. One of the guests, the beautiful Bellatrix, stole my hat at one point during the evening, and I've got to say she wore it better than me. But I really enjoyed my day up in Peckforton Castle, and I really hope you enjoyed watching the video of me making my dress. If you did enjoy it, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel, as I'll be hoping to get the Gryffindor version of the dress that I made for my friend up very soon.